Hi there. My name is Emma, and today we are going to be talking about gender-inclusive language or gender-sensitive language. So before we begin, I just want to talk a little bit about language. Language is always changing. And so what we used to say 50 years ago, 100 years ago, sometimes we don't talk the same way as we did back then. Now this is really true when we talk about women, or when we talk about professions that used to be filled with men, but now, because a lot of women work, they're also filled with women. And so because of these changes in society, changes in the status of women, now we are using different ways, different grammar to talk about men and women. So if you're a little confused, that's okay, because as we go through this lesson, it's going to become very clear and easy to understand what I'm talking about. So let's get started. Let's look at a common example of what I mean by language that is not gender inclusive. So I have this sentence: man has always been driven by his desire for happiness. Now in this case, I don't have a man or the man. There's no article before man. So we're talking about man in general, not a specific man. Maybe about 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and even sometimes today, people, when they wanted to talk about people in general, they would use the term man. And so this actually means people. People have always been driven by their desire for happiness. And so what we're trying to do in the English language is we're trying to change sentences like these so they also include women. So anytime in history books, in old English literature, in literature even from the 1950s and 60s, anytime you see the word man, it's usually referring to people if there's no article before it. And so again, this is a bit of a problem because we're not including women in this. People are made up of both men and women. And in this sentence, we're only talking about men. So how do I fix a sentence like this to make it more inclusive of both men and women? Well, like I said, man is actually a synonym of people. It looks like my marker has run out. Much better. People. So I can say people. In this case, I'd have to change this to have. Always, people have always been driven by their desire for happiness. So this is the first thing I want you to think. Man can become people in gender-inclusive language. Mankind is another thing we often talked about. This means all the people of the world. We now talk about it as humanity. So think of some famous quotes, famous English quotes. Maybe you know them, maybe you don't. First of all, I'd like to talk about when in 1960s, Neil Armstrong went to the moon, and he made a very famous quote. He said, "This is one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Now, if you took that sentence and you brought it into the 21st century, it would be changed. He would have probably said something like, "This is one small step for a man, one giant leap for humanity." We've just talked about man, mankind, people, humanity, and again, this is language we'd be using in the 1950s maybe. This is the language of the 21st century. Okay? So what I'd like to talk about next are certain jobs. In the past, these jobs were mainly done by men, and as a result, most of them contain the word man. But now we have a lot of women doing these same jobs. And so we want to include both men and women when we talk about these jobs. So what do they become? Well, first of all, we have chairman, which is a businessman of a sort. What we do is we change the word man to person. This becomes inclusive of both men and women. So we have chairperson or chairpeople. Policeman has now become police officer. Fireman has become firefighter. Mailman has become either letter carrier or mail carrier. Both are fine. And finally, salesman has become salesperson. Now this is not the whole list. I'm sure you could find many different words in English where they have man at the end of them. So if you want to make this gender inclusive, just get rid of the man, and oftentimes it's just adding person. Okay, so gender inclusive language is not only about vocabulary. We've looked at some vocabulary examples like policeman becomes police officer, fireman becomes firefighter. It's also about the grammar of the language too. So I have here 4 sentences, well 5, but we'll get to this one a bit later, about a manager. The first sentence, and this is general, we're not talking about a specific manager, we're talking about managers in general. In the past, I probably would have said a good manager knows his staff. Keyword, his. Because in the past, most managers were men. But this is changing. Now we also have female managers too. So in order to include them in our language, this one is not really used so frequently anymore. Okay. So one way people have gotten over this grammatically is they've added his or her. So they say, okay, well, a manager can be both a man or a woman, so why don't we just use his or her? A good manager knows his or her staff. So grammatically, this is okay to do, but the problem is if you have a very long paragraph where you use his or her, he or she, again and again and again, it makes the paragraph a lot longer and it's not so easy to read. And so even though this is correct grammatically, there are better ways to deal with this type of problem. So this one, I would give this one, first of all, an angry face. This one gets maybe okay. So not angry, we're not angry about this, but it's not ideal, it's not perfect. If we look at number 3, a good manager knows their staff. So now we're not saying if it's a man or a woman, which is good, but the problem is this breaks not a gender rule, this breaks a grammar rule. We have a singular subject, a good manager, so this is similar to he. It does not agree with their. This is for plural, this is for they. We use they, their, he, his, she, her. So this causes a grammar problem. So a lot of native speakers actually use this one. They use it informally when they talk to friends, when they talk to family. You hear this on TV all the time. A lot of people like to say their instead of his or her. And it's fine to use. You can use it, but don't use it when you're writing an essay. Don't use it in business. It's informal. So this one, it's not the best one to use. Gets an okay face. Now we get to the best one. The best thing to do if you come across this problem is pluralize it. So then you can use there, and subject, verb, there's an agreement. Now, so we have good managers know their staff. This is the best thing to do. If you can, anytime you come across this problem, make your subject plural and use their. So now let's look at it. So let me give this one a big smiley face. This is the best thing you can do. So let's do a practice one using this. So for number 5, a nurse should be nice to her patients. Now, when we think of nurses, when we think of teachers, when we think of certain professions, sometimes we think women do these professions. But it's not true. I know many male teachers, and I know many male nurses as well. And so in this case, it's actually it's not gender inclusive for men who do these professions. So we have the same problem as we did here. So be aware of your own bias. Do I think that there are certain professions where it's all women? Be careful with those cases specifically, because maybe you're more likely to use language that's not gender inclusive. So a nurse should be nice to her patients. How can we change this? Get rid of a, capitalize it to nurse. Add an S to make it plural. Nurses should be nice to. Change this to their. Nurses should be nice to their patients. So there you have it. So again, we've talked about vocabulary. We've talked about using man versus people. And finally, we've talked about grammar and how to make your grammar more gender inclusive. So to practice this more, I invite you to come check out our site at www.engvid.com. We have a quiz there that you can practice these types of sentence structures on. So until next time, take care.
They will continue the voyages we have begun and journey to all the undiscovered countries, boldly going where no man, where no one has gone before.